I'm here. Hello, everyone. I'm here with
Hello, everyone.
I'm here with Mr. Bimm, the former band director of Marian Catholic. How are you doing today?
I'm very well. Excited to be here for year 43.
All right. So, starting off, what is one piece of advice that you have for aspiring musicians at the high school level?
Practice. That sounds so simple, but the real truth is the people who succeed are the ones who discipline themselves to practice, because nobody wants to practice all the time. Wynton Marsalis did a long thing, a big, long production about not wanting to practice. Because it's hard work and it's boring, and you're putting in all this time doing stuff with. You don't always feel stuff coming back at you, but that's what makes the difference. If you work hard enough and study the performance side of things hard enough, all of a sudden your instrument becomes a voice. It becomes second nature. It just works for you. And that's the difference between playing like that and playing where you're hunting to try to get the notes to come out right. It's the world of difference. It's sort of like if you had to recite a poem in Russian. So all you could do is memorize the syllables that you had to say. You had no idea what it was about. Let's say the poem was about falling in love, and in your mind you're thinking, I'm hunting raccoons, because you don't understand what, you think it's a Russian poem about hunting raccoons. There's a complete disconnect. You feel nothing. If you know Russian, or if you're doing the poem in English and it's a poem about love, you can understand it and you can feel it, and it changes the way you can send it to other minds, other people, but it also changes the way you feel as you're saying that poem. And it's exactly the same thing with music. When you don't have to think about the mechanics, all of a sudden the music, the inside of the music starts to speak. It's the same thing for, one of the things I get asked a lot is advice to young band directors. And I essentially say the same thing. For them, it's study your scores. I got to work with a very famous band director a long, long time ago. His name was William Ravelli. He's the guy that made Michigan. And I asked him that same advice. I was a brand new young band director, and I said, what advice would you have for a young? And he just said, specifically, he said, wear the seat of your pants out studying your scores. Literally, he's saying you just have to do it a lot to be able to get to the point where it becomes second nature, and then you can start to express the music. I know that's a long answer, but if you want to be good, you have to practice. I've never seen a band that was good that didn't have people that practice so that they could play. To take that a little bit further, if you're sitting in a band with 50 people and one person doesn't know their stuff, and so they're playing a little bit out of time or a little bit out of tune, or play a wrong note from here or there, or they don't play their part solidly enough to balance the other stuff, they affect everybody else. That's the difference between us and virtually every other activity. Even some of the arts, like if you're an artist and you're making a painting, you affect no one else. It's not like 50 people are all putting their brush on the painting. It's one. And it's the same thing with virtually everything else, especially like sports. In sports you can live on one person. In music you can't. It has to be everybody toting their own weight. If you're in a math class, to take it a little bit different direction, if you're in a math class and you don't do your homework, so you fail the math test, everybody else can still get an A. If they did their homework, they all get an A. You didn't affect them at all. Their grade point is still 4.0. You're just the one that suffers. In band, if the whole class goes in and you take a test and one person fails the test, everybody is brought down because they have negatively affected the outcome. So in band, we, more than any place else, we depend on everybody else. Everybody has to carry their load. And so you practice so that you can express the music. You practice so that you can live up to your responsibility to everybody else. And when you really do that at a high level, the band is just smoking.
Thank you. Those are really wise words.
I'm old.
What instrument did you play, and how did you discover your love for music?
I'm a trumpet player, and My father was a trumpet player, not a professional or anything. He was a TV repairman, but he learned to play the trumpet in a little farm town band. And his father before him, my grandfather, was a trumpet player. And so Grandpa Charlie played trumpet. My dad, Charles, played the trumpet. I played the trumpet. My son Jeff played the trumpet. And now my grandson Charlie plays the trumpet. We have 5 generations of trumpet in my family. As far as I wasn't forced to play the trumpet. It just sort of was like, that's what Bimm guys do. And so by the time I was in 5th grade, like I started in 5th grade, and before the end of the year, I knew I wanted to be a band director. I knew I wanted to be in music. I can't say that as a 5th grader I knew it was band directing, but that was always the direction. Like from that time on, there was never a question of what I was doing. Now, part of that goes with practice too. My dad was. I was going to say obsessive, but that has too many negative connotations. He wanted me to succeed. And so the deal was, if I was going to start the trumpet, I had to practice an hour and a half a day in 5th grade. And so there's a part, I'll explain why I appreciate that so much from him. But when you play that much, when you play an hour and a half a day, you make really good progress, So I was moving along really fast. By the end of probably 6th grade, I knew all 12 scales and could play up to high C and stuff, just because I was playing so much. I have 2 real quick stories. My first trumpet teacher, when I was in 5th grade, it was a second lesson. My first lesson, he gave me an exercise to do, just this one exercise where you just play whatever comes out and push down the first valve, then the second valve, then the third valve. Da 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 da. He said, that's all I want you to do for a week. Well, I did that plus some other stuff because my dad was helping me. But I practiced an hour and a half a day. So we had a lesson sheet. You had to write in how much you practiced. And so my mom filled it out for me. She put 1.5, 1.5, 1.5. And then she signed it. And so I walked into my second lesson, and Mr. Katz looked at me and he said, "Oh, Greg, practicing a minute and a half that's never going to be enough." And I said, "Oh, no, that's an hour and a half." So he goes, this big smile, So immediately I was kind of on the road to success. But the bigger part of that was my dad loved the trumpet so much that he worked with me that hour and a half. He worked a long, long schedule. On Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, he worked 12 hours, 9 to 9. And on Wednesday and Saturday, he worked 9 to 6. But he would find time, like on Monday, he would come home. He had a half an hour to eat dinner at home. And so during that half hour that he would eat from 4:30 to 5, he and I would practice. I'd sit next to him. He'd be having dinner, and I would practice with him. He'd go back to work. He'd come home at 9 o'clock, and we'd practice for another hour. Now, this is a little 5th grade me, practicing from 9 to 10 o'clock at night. But he'd work 12 hours, and then he'd come home and practice with me. And so, it was sort of... it wasn't predestined. I wasn't forced into it, but it was a real natural thing. We were so involved, and he was so supportive that it's just natural that I would be infected with it. But part of it too is success. It's easy to want to play when you're good. It's easy to play when you're just making such good big strides. And that goes back to the first question: practice.
Yeah,
it's amazing how practice works.
Yeah, thank you. What is your favorite state-of-the-art memory, and what is your favorite teaching memory?
Oh golly, I don't. It's hard to put. Favorite memories, because I have as far as the teaching one, that's a really hard one. My favorite state-of-the-art story is really not a serious one. We have had so much fun here over the years, working and getting to know all of the directors, going back to Leo Henning, who was at St. Lawrence, and Brother Rice. And we just, it's been a very strong camaraderie between all of us directors for so long. That's a really good thing. But my favorite state-of-the-art story actually happens from way back in the early days. Our second band was playing a piece called Variations on a Korean Folk Song. And at that time, I was conducting all the bands. I didn't have an assistant. And the end of the piece comes in. It's all percussion, and there's a line that goes bum 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 bum, and they add instruments over the top. And there's a place where the vibraphone comes in, and it's supposed to play that. Somehow we had brought our own vibes from home, and somehow, in order to get them through the door, they had taken the keys off the vibe. Okay, and so when they put the keys back on, they didn't line them up properly. So what looked like the right notes were not the right notes. And so we're going along, everything's going real well, and all of a sudden, my first thought was it was so badly out of tune, like it was so many wrong notes, I thought maybe it was just the weather, like it was way so cold that it wasn't going to work. But we found out later that they had moved the keys over by one thing. So instead of hearing bum, 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 you heard this bing, bong, bong, bong. And I was almost in tears laughing so hard because, there's nothing you can do about it at that point. You're in the middle of the concert, the band's playing, and this comes in, and it's just the most obscenely wrong thing. Like, that kid never missed that part. Like, he was hitting where he thought the right notes were, but it was not anything close. And so that's probably my favorite memory just because it was so bizarre. We never had anything like that happen again, but, as far as I can't come up with a favorite teaching memory, I think, because there are just too many. There have been so many kids who have been affected by what we've done and have their lives have been changed. I've seen kids I've seen kids saved by being in band. Kids who were on a path to really get into trouble or on a path where they were just going to be complete failures. I've seen kids come into Marion who were so intimidated by life that they were just in a shell. And I just saw a post from a young man who graduated in 1981. And when he came into my band in 1977, it was my first band at Marion, he was a freshman, and he was completely shuttered in, like intimidated by everything. He felt like he was not a good student, and he was not a good player or anything like that. And he was just isolated, I guess maybe is the way to put it. But over the course of 4 years, he grew, and mostly because of the friends that he did in band, and he learned to play. By the time he was a senior, we played at the Summer Nationals. We were an exhibition band at Summer Nationals in Whitewater, Wisconsin, his senior year, and he was one of our trumpet soloists. As this is the guy who couldn't play and couldn't do anything, and I knew right away when I saw the change in his life, it was it had nothing to do with him playing music or he all of a sudden got to be good on trumpet. It had nothing to do with that. It was the beginning of his senior year, and I was standing talking to another trumpet player, big guy, same age. They were good friends, and this other guy, the first guy, his name is Jim. And we were on a football field, and he came running full speed, like 30 yards, and jumped from far away and landed right on the top of this kid's back, the other kid's back, and was just laughing and waving his arms and I was thinking, this is the same guy who was completely isolated. He was completely shut off from everything when he was a freshman, and now all of a sudden he is completely flourished into a vivacious, energized, fun-loving, laughing young man, and that's from band. I have some great memories of playing stuff. One of the most moving times. There have been some really good ones that have happened in some big venues and stuff, but one of the most moving times I had playing music, which is I only use this because it's so unique. It was a St. Patrick's Day. A number of years ago, we weren't playing anywhere special. We were just at home. It was a regular band rehearsal, and I handed out a piece called "Irish Tune from County Derry," which is "Oh Danny Boy," essentially, and it's a very famous arrangement by Percy Granger, and we just read it. And there's a time in music. There's this inspired kind of performance that can happen sometimes. You prepare yourself for it by learning to play your parts. You prepare yourself for it by learning to play in tune and to listen and be sensitive. And, you can prepare yourself for all that, but you can't make it happen. Like, over the years, I was trying to find ways to make this inspired performance happen, and you can't. It's just a matter where all the stars kind of align or something like that. And they did that day for that one reading of Irish Tune from County Derry. It was magnificent. It was beautiful. It was emotional. It was inspired. And everybody just went, they just had all come from science class or math class or, they were whatever goof. And it was this singular moment that and everybody in the room knew it. It was just really, really special. So.
Thank you. And last question, what is your favorite piece to conduct?
The Persichetti Symphony. And I say that I've got a short list of things that are really important to me. Like I love the Hindemus Symphony. There's a piece by Percy Granger called Lincolnshire Posy that's on my list. I love this piece by Gustav Holst called Hammersmith. That's one that people don't really have a great taste for because it takes real patience to, So I have a number of those that I really like, but. The Persichetti Symphony is probably the one that stands out the most. I think we played it 6 times while I was at Marion. And here's an interesting thing. That's what we played the first year of State of the Art in 1981. We played the Persichetti Symphony. But it has always been real special to me. So.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much for the interview. And
thank you guys for taking the time. This is really cool.
Yeah, no problem. Join band.
Absolutely, do that.
All right.
Thank you.